So in this home, let's see, I'm trying to think what they did to this home. This home had an old oil-fired furnace, and it's in Burlington. So the Vermont gas pipeline goes right down the road. And they had to really think, like, when they bought the home, and they were like, well, we want to go net zero with it. And it's perfectly sited for rooftop solar, so you can see they did that. They did some insulating and air sealing in the attic. The attic was like pretty bad. And they had this old dinosaur of a furnace that was due for replacement when they bought it. They knew they were going to have to replace it. And they sat down and they talked about their priorities. They talked about their path towards net zero. They talked about, like, what should we just replace it with the same kind of thing and do what's easy, or do we think about, like, where's our priorities, where's our values, where are we heading here? And they knew they wanted to be net zero, so they replaced that furnace with a heat pump. I think 2 heat pumps here, one kind of on each end of the house. And that's been working out pretty well for them. They also realized that when they took the furnace out and all that ducting out, they actually had some usable space in the basement. So they actually gained square footage and shrank their energy footprint at the same time. So that was kind of a win-win. But they had to do a long, hard look at, like, do we just, like, take the leap now? I mean, we have to do something. So they saw that, and then they saw, like, wow, this is our opportunity. Like, we need to do a home improvement project anyway. Let's do one that puts us on that path towards net zero. And then they replaced the water heater a couple years down the road, and they just slowly kept at it and started doing things. I think they've been going through the windows a little bit. The windows were really old and tired. So that's their path, and it had to do with having that priority, like, right from the beginning. Like, here's how we see our future. I know she bought an electric car recently, so she's charging that with that solar panel. So it's not only her heating and cooling and all of her at-home energy use, but now it's her transportation use too. And a lot of times when we talk about, we talk about our energy use, our transportation energy use is sort of not even in the picture. We're thinking, like, what's my power bill? What's my oil bill? Or my gas bill? We're not thinking about, like, oh, I drive a pickup truck 50 miles each way back and forth to work every day, and that costs me about $350 a month. And how many, like, BTUs and how much carbon? So we don't tend to look at that. But if you're going to look at your total energy picture, try to do it here. It's possible. It's harder when you live way out the sticks, guaranteed. But I just went by case study number 2. So this one, they did this solar system up here. This is hot water, and then this is their electric photovoltaic panels. Now they jumped right into solar about, I think this was probably like 12 years ago. They put those systems up there. But, yeah, we want you renewable energy. It's cool. And they put the solar hot water up there because it was accessible to them. Like that was a technology 10 years ago that a lot of people were doing. Now people will tend to put solar electric on the roof, and they'll run an electric heat pump water heater. So it's kind of the new solar hot water. But they did this. Solar electric was a lot more expensive then, like per kilowatt hour. So they got kind of a smallish system, and they set on that path. And they since did some weatherization, and they brought their load down. And then when they still couldn't really get to net zero, and that was a goal of theirs. So then they went and they purchased a piece of a community solar system. So to make up the difference, like, well, we don't really have enough rooftop left, and that seemed like a better deal for them. So they went there to get enough energy to net out their usage. And they did do some weatherization, insulating, air sealing. They did switch out their water heater eventually. So that it's a matter of, like, bringing the loads down and bring the renewables up until you can find that balance point. But they went at it a slightly different way. They went right at solar like 10 years ago. They were early adopters. They were like, yeah, let's do this. And they were like, okay, how do we go the rest of the way? Now they're looking into heat pumps to do their heating. So when people size their solar systems, when a solar company comes out to your house, they'll want to look at your electricals. It's like, how much electricity do you use, right? And they'll say, okay, and oftentimes they will size a system to make that much energy, but they're not looking at your gas bill or your oil bill. You know, they're saying, well, they're not answering that question of like, where's net zero for you? Some are better than others at it, and if net zero is like where you're headed, it behooves you to ask that question. Like, if I were to heat my house with heat pumps, how big would my system need to be? Here's another house, really dumpy little house in a nice neighborhood in Burlington. And you can see it's all fixed up now. And this was bought as a rental property. But they wanted to do the right thing. Because they were going pretty deep fixing this house up, they wanted to incorporate energy efficiency. So they built the walls out. And you can see here, like in order to, so they built the walls, they made the walls thicker on the outside. And here's where they started like extending the roof so that it would cover that. See how small the overhangs were originally? They couldn't really build the walls out, so they had to build the roof out too. So they went kind of deep on the building itself, but they were able to offset that. It's got great solar exposure on the right side of the roof up there that you can see, and they were able to offset this mostly with this energy efficiency work that they did. They replaced all the windows. They made the walls thicker. They did a lot of air sealing, a lot of insulating, and it was a fairly small house to begin with. And they pulled it right off the gas line. So now this house is a net zero home, and it's a rental. Yes,
What's the advantage of extending the eaves? Is it for ventilation or is it for runoff?
Well, if the eaves were they didn't have big overhangs, and they wanted to make their walls thicker on the outside.
Okay.
And so, in order even to maintain some overhang beyond the walls, they had to extend the roof line out so they could build a thicker wall. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
It's not a typical, I mean, I'm looking at the eaves on that house originally, and they are very, very small
They're pretty
compared
small.
to normal.
And you can see how much bigger they are in this second scenario.
Yeah, significantly. That's what, close to over 2 feet.
No.
No.
No?
It might be a little
16
foot and a half,
inches,
something like that.
Okay.
Anyways, that was their vision, like right from the beginning. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to do it by building the walls thicker on the outside. That was their program. We're going to put new windows, new walls. We're going to make this place super energy efficient, and put a nice little heat pump in it, and it's going to be good to go. A lot of people are doing backup with wood. They figure wood is a pretty renewable resource, even if it doesn't come from my land, if it comes from my neighbor's land or the guy down the road who's got a firewood operation. And different folks have different opinions about that. You know, I certainly run into all kinds of people. Some are for it, some are against it. Some think the house will be too tight and the wood stove won't work or whatever. But there's modern wood heating technology now. There's pellet stoves and pellet boilers and really advanced wood heating equipment that's very efficient and pretty clean. Yes, sir.
So you're saying that for some of these houses that they're using solely the heat pump?
Well, I'm starting to talk about backup heat now. And
Okay.
wood is the predominant backup heat for net zero homes.
Because what happens when you have 2 weeks of 10-degree weather with the heat pump?
Yep, wood stove or electric space heaters,
Okay.
or a couple pieces of electric baseboard, like one in the bathroom, one in the living room.
If you don't have panels, solar panels, you're talking a lot of kilowatts being burned.
Talking a lot of kilowatts, even if you have solar panels,
Okay.
it's still kilowatts. You're still burning kilowatt hours, and you're burning that with your heat pump. And certainly, you could make the argument that as it gets very, very, very cold outside, even if your heat pumps are still making a little bit of heat, they're not doing it very efficiently.
Yeah.
So their efficiency might be way down low, where electric resistance isn't that much worse. But again, we're looking over the course of the year. How do we do?
Yeah.
So if it's a couple weeks and we have to do that to get through a couple cold weeks in the winter, and then it works fine the rest of the time, hopefully, we'll get a couple sunny weeks in the summer and then it'll make up.
It's usually right around 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Right.
Well, it's all in the map. Sometimes it's 60 degrees in January, and sometimes it's
No, I'm saying
minus
for the
20.
heat pump to be less effective.
Oh, no.
Where does it reach the
Heat pumps,
1.0?
heat pumps are cold climate heat pump is rated for use at minus 5 degrees.
Okay.
The heat pumps, the Fujitsu heat pumps I have in my house are rated at 75% of their capacity at minus 15 degrees. So it's proven they do work in cold weather. Some of them have a cold weather cutoff, like some of the Mitsubishis cut off at like minus 18, minus 19 degrees, and some don't. Some will just keep working with reduced capacity and reduced efficiency as the temperatures get colder outside.
And Mitsubishis are the ones that most people install.
No, you see all different kinds. There's the Daikin, there's the Fujitsu, there's the Mitsubishi, there's the higher. I believe it's a European model, and that's good down to like minus 22 radio. So they have them different kinds.
The biggest key is insulation.
So it's
Most money you can spend.
The less, yeah. So that's why we always used to tout energy efficiency first, because then you could buy a smaller renewable system to make a difference. Right? But if it takes buying the renewable system to get you to think about doing energy efficiency, then so be it. Do that.